right, Tom, appreciate you jumping in here as always. Story of the game, penalties, mental mistakes, and special teams. And one of the things I brought up is Arkansas truly hasn't played a road game in almost 2 years because last year wasn't a great indicator of what a road SEC environment is with only 25% capacity. You had the neutral site game against A&M this past weekend, but still not a full house. Do you think that they were truly prepared for what an SEC environment is all about?
Well, they did the best they could. They thought they were prepared. And I felt there would be some mental errors or some, Georgia does some kind of a move before the snap on defense and somebody jumps. But that happened a lot more frequently than I expected it would. And Kirby got the home folks stirred up. I mean, they were ready to go. They were loud. They knew that they would have an impact on the game. And it was just really a series of things that got Arkansas behind the 8 ball, starting with, they decided, hey, we'll defer to the second half. Georgia went right down and scored. And then you return the kickoff and you get to the 17. That sets them behind the change and they start jumping off sides. And the next time they kick off, they're going to fair catch it, but they don't catch it. And so they're starting on the 7. And that led to the block punt touchdown. So, after 21-0, I thought Arkansas, like Sam said, settled in the second quarter. But by then, the die was cast, and, Georgia just did a good job of finding ways to run the ball on Arkansas. And, that's a good bit of adversity for them to say, okay, we were rolling. We were number 8, 4-0, feeling good. Now reality sets in. It's how you show up week to week. I swear, you look at the results from last weekend. Week to week, who is better on that day? And I think after Alabama and Georgia in this conference, how you show up on game day determines who's going to win a lot of these games.
Tom, speaking of getting stirred up, I came over to you, Clay, and Trey in the press box before the game, and you guys were both a little frustrated. Y'all both got hit? Like a car, like someone hit both of you guys? And I was just sitting there. It's like, dude,
not with a fist, like a car, right?
Do Georgianians or Garganians or whatever you got to say, do they not know how to drive?
Well, I don't know about all that. I mean, the one I was in was just a tiny little love tap. I mean, we barely even traded paint. So mine was very, very minor. But apparently DJ Williams, his Uber driver got hit while he was there too. So It happens in threes and bam, bam, bam.
Well, I mean, you're only a couple hours from Talladega, so they were racing this weekend. So I guess everybody was in a racing mood.
Yeah, and when you talked to Clay this week, he drove down, and when he got to Talladega on Friday, I guess, he ran into a ton of traffic, and I guess he had not realized that, it was going on, and that's a booger bear getting through that traffic around Talladega.
Yeah, Clay got out of his truck, got on top of the camper shell, and took his shirt off just in honor of everything going on there. It was a sight to behold, yeah. All right, let's talk about KJ Jefferson, who never got on track. We know that for Arkansas's offense to really be successful, he's got to run the ball. Eight rushes, it nets out at 5 yards. He got sacked 3 times and lost over 20 yards there. So, Tom, do you think that the young quarterback for Arkansas lost any confidence at all after seeing what an elite number 1 defense in the country looks like?
Well, it's hard for me to answer whether he did, but, it brings you back to reality a little bit more. Things were going really well. And truthfully, Georgia just overwhelmed them, and they couldn't move all the guys they needed to move to run the ball well. The linebackers were just crashing in. The Kobe Dean had a big day. And then, I've mentioned this before, but one of these days they're going to take away sacks from team passing yardage and not make it rushing yardage because those aren't running plays.
Yeah, it doesn't seem fair in that. One thing Georgia did a good job of, though, was taking away Arkansas's, offensive weapons. Traylon Burks, another example. They targeted Traylon 7 times in the game. He had 3 catches, only resulted in 10 yards. I mean, it was one thing Georgia did well. They had a plan for was they were not going to let Arkansas's offensive studs get loose.
No, that was a surprising aspect of this game to me was the way they clamped down. Like overall, I mean, Arkansas they couldn't block long enough to hit the deeper routes, and Traylon Smith never got going. And if it hadn't been for Rocket Sanders tackle breaking, that throw over there on the right sideline, I think a guy hit him within 1 or 2 yards of the line of scrimmage. He broke that tackle and dragged some more guys on a 22-yard gain, and that was the one series between the first and second quarters where they actually got down into scoring range. And just to kind of show you what kind of day it was, Cam Little, who hadn't missed all year, misses a 37-yarder. And it's the shutout part of it that's a little bit frustrating, So just get 3 on the board, okay, we weren't shut out. Georgia doesn't have all these records they can throw back to first back-to-back shutouts against SEC teams since 1980 and all this stuff. But, you just have to swallow. Sam Pittman, he was pretty forthright. Our ego was crushed. Our spirits are crushed, but we're going to bounce back. You just have to take it for what it is. One loss against a team from the East. It shows you how prepared you have to be and how physical you have to be for your remaining games.
Hey, through 5 games, you've had a couple of games with 13 flags. There was one Saturday, you had 13 penalties for 101 yards against Georgia. A, how concerned are you there? And B, what do you do to clean that up before you go to Oxford? You cannot give up more penalty yards than you have in rushing or passing.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? And I don't know. I mean, Sam referenced, you could tell Sam was frustrated and got asked about 3 different times about penalties. And he's like, I don't know, guys. What do? Do you tell them, don't jump off sides? Don't pass interference somebody. It was so kind of comical that, he's throwing his hands up. They take them off the field if they commit penalties in practice, but that's not enough. I mean, maybe guys have to drop down and give you 5 or 10 or something. The fall starts. Georgia was stunning on the line or stemming, and guys would jump. I mean, Dalton Wagner had a rough day of it, and they put him on the post-game interview list. So basically, hey, dude, you're a senior. You shouldn't be doing this. And the rest of them, I didn't think the pass interference call on Monteric Brown was a good call. The ball's showing up, the receivers pushing on him. They're both just standing there, passing interference. Kind of
hand fighting.
Salem Burks is pretty obvious. He pushed off. But some of the other stuff, you just can't be so handsy. And apparently this crew was told, call it tight. Because a lot of Alabama games, and they're playing that kind of defense, all those flags aren't thrown.
Yeah.
Tom Murphy with us here on the Morning Rush. Tom, one of the things I was thinking about during the course of this game is Georgia was just running all over Arkansas. Sam Pittman's facing his own white nightmare. Now, he didn't recruit all those guys to Georgia, but a few of them he's had conversations with, or he was a part of them getting. I mean, it's him facing some of the guys that he recruited. That's got to be tough for Sam Pittman, because I know a lot of players, and I heard some conversation earlier this week, they love Sam Pittman, but it's got to be tough for him knowing what he taught them is being used against him on Saturday.
Yeah, and I can't get into the deep X's and O's of it, but Grant Morgan talked about it some, that with the 3-man front, Georgia's like, okay, if you're going to do that, we're going to run the ball. They blocked it up well, and Grant said they hit them in their pockets, so meaning they went in some gaps where, say, if you're Grant Morgan, you're responsible for this particular gap, but the way they blocked it up, you kind of have to have an eye on 2 gaps, and then the lineman walls you off, and they're getting into the second level. And so, Barry Odom, for these power run teams, because LSU will try to do this, Alabama will try to do it, and, I'm not sure if Ole Miss's run schemes can be compared to Georgia so much. But now there's kind of a blueprint for how to attack the 3-man front with the run, and so they've got to have the counterpoint to that. And speaking of that, this Ole Miss game on Saturday is going to be a lot of countermeasures. What does Ole Miss do to counter the drop 8 zone defense Arkansas ran on them last year, and then what Barry Odom and the defensive staff do to the measures to counteract what Ole Miss plans to do. Very interesting.
Yeah, and that's a top 20 matchup that we have in front of us this weekend. You also had some really good ones this past weekend, and 4 top 10 teams lost. You had Oregon, Arkansas, Notre Dame, Florida all lost. You also had A&M falling to Mississippi State. What kind of shook up in college football?
Yeah, it really did. And I think it showed that, Iowa, they keep winning. Penn State, they're undefeated. There's a few others out there like BYU, Wake Forest, Oklahoma State, Michigan State are undefeated. But I think there's a pretty clear gap between the first 4 or 5 teams, and then, Ohio State's ranked ahead of Oregon right now. Well, I couldn't with clear conscience do that. Oregon beat them on the road. And so Arkansas, when I debated how far to drop them in my poll, you're like, well, a lot of teams that are right around them lost. And so I couldn't drop them. I think I put them at 14th, and they wind up 13th. So that's not a bad drop for a 37-0 shutout. And I didn't drop Ole Miss that badly either. So, yeah, Arkansas and Ole Miss, to me, are in the second wave of teams that are really good, that aren't going to challenge for the national championship, but they can give you problems. And I think there's a lot of other teams out there that, and the undefeated teams I just mentioned, I just don't think they've taken on as tough of a schedule as many of the SEC contenders so far.
Yeah, it seems like Saturday's game, the outcome will have a lot to say about who's going to end up second place in the SEC West, but we'll see how that unfolds. Hey, you mentioned the word blueprint. We were discussing on our Hog Reaction show after the game, and I was making the point that what you saw from Georgia is the blueprint, in my estimate, that Sam Pittman's trying to follow and what he wants to build at Arkansas. Whether he'll ever achieve that, I don't know, but that's what he wants this program to become: physical, nasty up front, able to push opponents around, run the ball down your throat. Is that a fair estimate of what Sam's really trying to achieve here, is to do to opponents what Georgia did to Arkansas, just bully you up front into submission?
I think that is. And think about how, if you're a Razorbacks fan, on Saturday you felt when it was 21-0, oh, it's going to be really hard to get back in this game. Georgia's controlling the ball. They're running it when they want to run. They only threw 11 passes. They really didn't have to. And that's the point Sam was making after the Texas game. Hey, if we can run the ball all day, I'm not going to pass it. So, yes, I think that's exactly the blueprint that Arkansas wants to get to. Got a ways to go. Got to get a little more physical, a little more beefy up front, and just more precise in how they block things up, and pass it when you want to. And they pretty much did that against Texas. But Georgia's next level, as Sam pointed out. A hell of a team that was better than them on that day. You
win games like that in December. We used to say February, but those games are won in December, not necessarily in October.
Yep. And I do believe Arkansas will bounce back. And I think the Ole Miss game really is going to be a slotting game. Whoever wins this will have a chance with the Auburn probably to try to get to number 2 in the division. And there's a lot of good games. Hey, Mississippi State's win at A&M. Mm-hmm. That didn't look fluky to me. I mean, that looked pretty solid. So tremendous games left in the SEC West for the Razorbacks.
Tom, we appreciate it, buddy. We'll talk to you a little more about Ole Miss on Thursday, okay?
Sounds great. See y'all.
All right, Tom Murphy with us every Monday and Thursday here on the morning.
Back and better than ever. All eyes are on the gridiron as teams are back for another football season. As always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. With the new updated site and interface, even more odds, props, and contests, BetOnline continues to be the number one source for everything football. Head to your website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Don't forget to use our promo code BELIEVE to receive your bonus. That's BLEAV. From football, basketball, boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of these amazing offers for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts.